Welcome to this special edition of the Mayor's Manual podcast, recorded at the Atom Tower in Amsterdam for the Climate Adaptation Summit 2021. Welcome everyone watching and joining. In our podcast, we explore solutions for metropolitan challenges. We do this with both thinkers and doers, solutions further down the road, and those that should scale up today. My name is Tijdens, Managing Director at AMS Institute, and together with my co-host, Sascha Stolp, Amsterdam's Director for Future-Proof Assets, we aim to inspire you to accelerate global urban transitions. So, Sascha, big urban challenges take center stage in our podcast, but can you explain to our listeners and our viewers, why is it called the Mayor's Manual?
Well, because the mayor's agenda is important. Already today, 50% of the world population is living in cities. And within 2015, it will be around 7 billion people who are living in cities. The mayors have an enormous task, not only to keep their citizens safe, healthy and prosperous, but also to make sure that we are going to become the circular city, the climate adaptive city, energy neutral and data safe. So how are we going to do it? We are speaking with front runners and change makers from both the government and the private sector and the knowledge institutes. They have new ideas and also very valuable business cases of how we can achieve this new prosperous city. And that's in the end what makes the city future-proof. So the question is, how are we going to do this together with our listeners, audience and everybody else?
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what's on the menu today. And we also want to focus today on what it means to have a purpose as an organization. And I think you put the purpose really well already. What does it mean to assume responsibility with these big transitions, tackling the urban challenges, and for instance, in line with the Climate Adaptation Summit, becoming a climate adaptive city. So we're proud to introduce our two guests today, Daniel Martinez and Evelien van Leeuwen, as our guests today. Daniel is CEO of Orbia, a community of businesses that empowers their employees to pursue big systemic solutions. And Orbia is exactly that purpose-led company, committed to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and passionate about the challenges that define how people will live and thrive tomorrow. And before joining Orbia in 2018, Daniel was CEO of Orbia's holding company. And prior to that, he was director for worldwide strategy and planning at Cisco and held various positions in investment and strategy in business and government. Evelien van Leeuwen, on the other hand, is scientific director and my colleague at AMS Institute, the Amsterdam Institute for Advanced Metropolitan Solutions. And she is also a full professor at Wageningen University and research in the chair of urban economics. Furthermore, she's vice president of the European Regional Science Association and a member of the OECD Expert Advisory Committee on Rural Innovation and a member of the International Advisory Board of the Amsterdam Economic Board. So, Daniel and Evelien, a very warm welcome to you. If I may start with you, Daniel, Orbia has defined its purpose to advance life around the world, a very big, encompassing purpose. Can you explain what that means and how that is fundamental to mobilizing your 22,000 employees globally at Orbia?
Yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation, Ken and Sascha. It's a pleasure to be with you and with Evelien. This is one of the topics that is a real passion to most of the people at Orbia, if not everyone, of the 22,000 employees who work every day to advance life around the world. Again, I think the purpose is a very important driver of the things we do and how we do things. Orbia started many years ago in Mexico as an industrial company, and we're now transforming the company and trying to become a company that is really customer-centric. Sascha was talking about the challenges associated to being a major and running a city, customer centricity, and putting the people at the center of things is at the core of our transformation. And I believe that that is at the core of the major challenges, whether there's managing a city in Latin America, in Asia, or in Europe, or in any part of the world. And what we did as part of this transformation to become a truly customer-centric organization was to focus on solving a few of the world's most pressing challenges, namely food security, water management. We have too much water one day, and the next day we have no water. Just to give you a couple of data points, Mexico City is home to 22 million people. By 2030, we expect to have 30 million people. The water that is transported into the city is lost and leaks. At least 40% of the water is lost because of leaky pipes. And that is a major challenge in terms of having a city that is livable, a city that is lovable, and a city that is resilient. If we don't manage our water reserves in an efficient and in an intelligent way, in 30 years, we'll run out of water in Mexico City. So there's many, many challenges, and happy to talk about many of these challenges during the podcast. But I think our objective and our mission and our dream of advancing life around the world has to start with putting people at the center of everything that we do.
And you mentioned water as one of the major challenges of Mexico cities, and that holds true for many metropolitan regions around the world. One of your companies within the Orbia family is BaFin. They are both based in the Netherlands, and they produced this movie, this little film clip, and I think that perfectly sets the stage. So if we can have a look at this film, that would be great.
I am your city. I house you, feed you, care for your loved ones. I provide you with work and pleasure. I am a living, breathing, unstoppable organism made up of you, people. People living, loving, and playing. Because what is a city without its people? People give me purpose. I need you to thrive so I can live. And I need your help. My drinking water is disappearing, depleted by demand and leaking away in a maze of crumbling infrastructure. My buildings are failing, threatened by age and poor design. The greenery that once filled my streets and gave you air is dying. And year after year, I fled more and more. My sanitation system is outdated and overwhelmed, endangering our health and safety. And I'm getting hot. Dangerously hot. Soon, I may be too hot for you to live in. If we're going to have a future together, things need to change. We can't keep using the same short-term thinking. We need to plan for those who come next. You created me, and now I need you to stand with me. Build me better, never failing. I am your city, and we are one.
Daniel, can you give us a look in how you look not only at cities and at climate adaptation, but foremost in how to create progress in a very short time globally? Because the solutions we are looking for, it's not, you can not copycat them to the next city, but there's probably something that we can do to bring all the solutions together and to just speed up. Well, what do we need from each other for this process?
Well, that's a great question, Sasha, and I'll try to tackle it as efficiently as possible in a few seconds and minutes, but I think it has to do with a few things. It has to do with connections, and I think this podcast is a great example of how we can establish connections between experts that spend most of their time and have spent most of their lives thinking about how to improve livability and lovability of cities. Connections with global and local partners are absolutely critical. The second thing has to do with communities. How can we think about new ways of engaging communities? I think that Europe has provided great examples after the world wars in terms of how cities were reinvented after major crises, how cities were redesigned. In some cases, putting people at the center. In some cases, people were not put at the center of redesigning people after major catastrophes. And then the third thing has to do with data and really being data-driven and being fact-based in terms of how we think about solutions. If we think about the fact that 1 out of 9 people in the world today don't have access to safe water, if we think about the fact that 1 out of 3 people don't have access or don't own toilets, and if we think about the fact, to the previous point that I mentioned, that up to 70% of the world's water that is transported into cities is lost in something as basic as leaky pipes, what are the things that we can do? Thinking from a city perspective, we can talk about mobility, and people like Gale Architects have done tremendous work in terms of research on the mobility side. What happened during the pandemic, what happened during and after the lockdowns in terms of the use of bikes, bus, metro, cars, scooters, etc. How are people behaving before, during, and after the sort of lockdowns in terms of activities? Are they sort of engaging in commerce? Are they using electronics? Are they eating outside? Are they eating at home? And one of the very important things that they measured has to do with emotions. Are people happy? Are people sad? Are people lonely? How do people feel in terms of hope, fear, and boredom? These may seem data points that are not as sort of obvious for city managers, city planners, and businesses, but they're very, very critical data points that we need to consider in terms of, again, connecting with local and global partners, engaging in a different way with communities, engaging with, from a business perspective, with our customers. So let me just give you an example that is a little bit beyond the realm of urban planning and urban life, but it has to do with water. 70% of the world's water is used in agriculture. Rice cultivation is used with flooding techniques. If we eliminate a few sort of 100 hectares in terms of moving them from flooding techniques to drip irrigation, which is one of our businesses, we can eliminate the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of cars from circulation in the world. How can we engage with governments in places like Vietnam, in places like China, and how can we engage with people in the agricultural space and move them from using flooding techniques to drip irrigation? That, at the end of the day, in a few years' time, can eliminate 400 million vehicles, the equivalent of 400 million vehicles from circulation. Wow. So a lot that we can do in terms of what we call intelligent ruralization, a lot that we can do in terms of what we call intelligent urbanization. And again, I think we're very excited about the prospects of really moving the needle in terms of helping address a few of the world's most pressing challenges with people like you.
Thanks, Daniel. And I'd like to switch for now to Evelien. You've seen the film, the movie clip, and heard Daniel talk about creating connections, about communities, being fact-based, also looking at emotions of people. I think as a scientist, both striving for scientific excellence and also looking for societal impact. How do you look at this movie and about how Daniel positions Orbia in this field of looking for solutions to global challenges?
Well, I think I cannot agree more with what Daniel is saying. I think indeed if we want to improve our cities, it is indeed about new connections. And that's, of course, also exactly what we try to do at the AMS Institute. So to bring together the universities with the citizens and the city itself to address both questions coming from the city, from the citizens, but also from the universities, and to bring them together. and to get answers not only from science, but also get answers from the citizens and from the city. And I think this combination, working together with having this joint goal of creating better cities and more advanced cities, I think that that's really what we need, and that's also what's really nice and about the AMS Institute and the collaboration. And you see a lot of enthusiasm amongst, well, people from the municipality and the scientists that work, of course, with us and with the city. As a scientist myself and being an urban economist, I also really agree about putting the people at the center, and also to be clear about what we are aiming, what our aims are, and what we want and what we need. And then I also think it's actually well-being, the well-being of our society, and in the case of Amsterdam, for example, of the city of Amsterdam, the people living there. And I think that should really be at the top. And for that, we need resilience. We need to look at the climate. We need to look into the future at biodiversity. We need to look at the happiness of people. And also, I think you need to understand. You need to, of course, use facts for that, and to need to understand also the system. So you need to understand the city as a system of a complex system with a lot of subsystems, like the social, the environmental, and the economic system. They interact with each other, and if we can understand those interactions, but also how certain developments impact people at different places in the city, but also different places in the world, I think we can make really good policies and have a very positive and important impact. And finally, also to comment also what Daniel was saying, which is also at the top of my research agenda, if you want, is how can we translate well-being into useful indicators, and not use the kind of simple indicators we've used for years, like GDP, like just the number of jobs, or other kind of variables that are really simple, if you want, to go to more complex indicators like well-being and happiness, but also not only the number of jobs, but also the quality of jobs and what they add to our society and to the people working in those jobs.
Yeah, this human-centric approach, I'm sure, Sasha, that really resonates with you as well. Mm-hmm. In the movie, the 2-minute movie, it even says, if we are going to have a future together, things need to change. That sounds quite ominous. From your perspective, does that hold true for a city like Amsterdam, for instance?
Yes, it does, because we are an historical delta city built for complete other circumstances that we're going to face in the coming years. Well, due to climate change, we will see enormous heat stress, storm water, and dry periods, and we are not used to this kind of circumstances. And it's actually the transition, and it's speeding up the transition that we have to go to become the circular and future-proof city. So it's actually what's Evelien mentioning too. It's about developing this whole new sustainable business case. How are we going to do this? And we need each other for this, because it's literally every euro that we're going to invest in people, it has a return on investment, not only in people itself, but also in the environment and in new business cases, but also in the new storytelling. We have to create this new story, this new perspective. And therefore, a joint partnership of actually knowledge institutes, government, and the private sector is needed, yes.
Right. And it also probably means that we have to say goodbye to certain prerogatives that we have had from the past. Private entities are doing this, and local government doing that, and maybe knowledge institution producing new knowledge. All that is sort of shaken up, and we assume different roles. Before we get into that, maybe we have to look at one example that really clearly connects to the climate adaptation, and look at the Manuri building. Yep. We have another short clip that we would like to invite you to have a look at.
Amsterdam heeft de ambitie om in 2050 klimaatadaptief te zijn. Klimaatadaptief betekent voor Amsterdam dat we om kunnen gaan met hitte, droogte en extreme neerslag. Dat betekent dat we met al onze bebouwde ruimte en dus ook gebouwen ervoor gaan zorgen dat de leefomstandigheden prettig gaan blijven.
De natuur is een prachtige bron van inspiratie waar we veel van kunnen leren als het gaat om hoe je met water, met energie en met grondstoffen kunt omgaan. Wij moeten proberen om als mensen die lessen van de natuur toe te passen op de stad en niet langer de stad en de natuur als twee gescheiden entiteiten te zien.
Een van de tests die we daarin doen is gebouw Manori. Op project Manori gaan we een deel van het douchewater gebruiken om het dak te irrigeren en te koelen. En niet alleen het dak, maar ook de balkons, zodat die balkons van prachtig groen kunnen worden voorzien. Dat is ontzettend goed. En niet alleen voor mensen, maar ook voor biodiversiteit.
Op dit dak doen we al een paar jaar onderzoek naar het verschil tussen groendaken en blauwgroene daken. Het verschil zit hem erin dat een blauwgroen dak water kan opslaan onder de beplanting, zodat de beplanting ook gedurende periodes van droogte meer water ter beschikking heeft en dus langer kan groeien, bloeien en ook meehelpen om de stad te verkoelen. Wat we op het gebouw van Manori gaan doen, is in dat blauwgroene dak ook zonnepanelen toevoegen.
Als we de stad niet gaan vergroenen en alleen maar gaan verharden, dan wordt het hier ontzettend warm.
We moeten leren die natuurlijke ecosysteemfuncties in de stad te integreren om zo een gezonde en een leefbare stad voor onszelf te bouwen.
So that's, I think, a very interesting example of an actual climate adaptation measure, technology implemented in the city. But Daniel, you commented on creating connections, the communities, being fact-based, but still, you know, it is in actual practice, I guess, quite difficult to get out of the legacy systems and move into new solutions that, you know, maybe challenge the status quo. Can you reflect a bit on one, how you do that, move forward from a legacy situation forward, and also how come Orbia is claiming some kind of co-ownership of these challenges that seem broader than the company itself?
Yeah. So let me give you a couple of examples. One of our companies, again, has to do with managing water in a more efficient way in growing food with much less resources, not only from a water perspective, but also from a nutrition perspective, and every single aspect of sort of the inputs that go into producing food, which is one of the world's sort of most pressing challenges today. If we just think about the old versus the new, and these are the two examples that I want to provide to you all, let's think about how we can come up with solutions with old ideas, quote unquote, old ideas. If we think about how we grow sugar cane in places like India, India has 5 million sugarcane hectares that are not using drip irrigation, which uses much, much less water. If we move from the traditional ways of growing sugarcane in India, and we convert every single one of those 5 million hectares to drip irrigation, which is not a new technology, it's a technology that was invented in a kibbutz in Israel more than 50 years ago. It's been obviously perfected, but again, we're using old solutions to existing problems. We would eliminate, or we would save water to the equivalent of 19 million Olympic pools in India. So imagine the amount of water and the saving that 19 million Olympic pools represent by just using old technology in an existing problem. That's one example of one of the things that Orbia is doing. Another thing that is closer to your home has to do with one of the biggest ports in the Netherlands. And we're using very advanced technologies with AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to help the port authorities in one of the largest ports in the Netherlands to solve how water is being managed and to solve how the port is being managed and move it to a more efficient way in terms of water saving, in terms of helping the customers of the port, and in terms of really moving the needle in terms of efficacy and efficiency. We're at the very early stages of that pilot. We'd love to sort of show you the results as soon as we have more robust data. But how we can use artificial intelligence, how we can use machine learning in very old problems like managing water in a very, very old and traditional and even a landmark port like this one in Amsterdam is a good, not in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, is one very good example of how we are using new technologies in collaboration with companies that are sort of very, very small startups, very innovative, in collaboration with port authorities, in collaboration with institutes that are sort of breaking ground in terms of thinking about how to solve problems in cities. So we can't do it alone. We will not do it alone. We need collaboration with local partners. We need collaboration with global partners. But at the end of the day, we're very excited that we're starting to see significant progress in terms of moving the needle from a people perspective, from a planet perspective, and at the end of the day, from an economic perspective / from a profit perspective as well.
You say you can't do it alone, but still you assume some kind of responsibility to take the initiative, it seems.
So I think we don't have a choice. I think the clock has been ticking for too long. Sasha mentioned the importance of circularity. Circularity has to be critical in terms of the way in which we solve problems from a business perspective, from a city perspective, from an academic perspective as well. We need to stop thinking about living in a world in which we extract resources from the earth, we transform things, and then we dump them. We need to change the way in which we operate in today's world, and the time is up. The clock has been ticking for too long. We don't have an option. Again, I was providing the example of Mexico City in terms of water and how the water reserves are depleting. That is the case for almost every single city in the world, and most of the people in the world live in cities, as Sasha explained in her introduction. So we don't have that much time to solve the problems, and we need as much people involved in solving these issues, and it has to be a collaborative effort.
The ownership of these urban challenges, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not only in cities, but it's basically worldwide, of course, that we see things are very unsustainable, and we cannot go on for this even not 10 more years, I would say. So we really need to change for reasons for the extraction, for the materials we need, for sustainability, for biodiversity. But also I think something else is the discontent, the inequalities that are also rising in our society. So there's a lot of inequality in terms of income, of course, but also in terms of opportunities and what we mentioned earlier on, happiness. And so what we see is also a growing discontent of people, resulting in, for example, populistic voting, in not believing in science anymore, in being against the elites, whatever the elites might be. And I think that's also related. Everything is connected to everything, which makes it complex, but also we really need a change. And this is also a time to change because also of this social unrest, I would say. Of course, also the pandemic now gives us a point where we need to make change and can make a big change. We need a reshuffle, and I think indeed the time is now.
Yeah, and Sasha, I mean, you are active as a professional in the city of Amsterdam, mm-hmm. and I think it's very encouraging, right, to hear a CEO like Daniel and a professor from university assuming this ownership, co-ownership of these urgent problems. Yet, a city is a very complex sort of organism, and if we all want to make a difference and start pulling, in different direction, then my mechanical engineering says the thing doesn't move, the needle doesn't move. So how do you look at this from a city perspective? How to sort of orchestrate this, or is that the wrong word?
Well, no, I think this is the right word. What you're looking for are the people, the front runners, who are actually moving right now. For example, the owner or the developer of the building of Manori, he was a traditional real estate developer. And what he is now doing, he is taking a part of what used to be the traditional government task, for water management. He is now incorporating this within his development assignment to create added value, actually, for the people who are going to rent in his building. So it's bringing together the responsibilities, but also sharing the value that you create. So the thing is that what we have to do for the coming years is how are we going to measure this? And measure this also in a perspective from economic side. So why should it be beneficiary for somebody who's developing real estate to take rainwater harvesting and a cooling urban heat island effect in account? And we don't have these systems right now in yet, but that's what I think you will see in the coming years, bringing together, and this will be the transition. It's not the tasks from individual organizations and to optimize them, but just to incorporate them within each other and developing this new way of calculating this sustainable business case, actually. That's what needed for everybody in the process. It's not only for the Knowledge Institute making this new knowledge, or for a private partner having this business case, or a government side having new standards or procurement regulations, but it's actually all combined in facilitating this citizen who is living in the city, who is working in the city, having transport, taking care of each other. That's what we should facilitate on a different way. That's actually what's the case all about.
And maybe getting back to you, Daniel, listening to maybe from your Orbia perspective, which at the end of the day is a private company that has to check its bottom line, like any organization. Let's be honest. I mean, that also holds true for scientific organizations and government, but still there is a different dynamics. In your dealings with government, both on national and local level, do you encounter this kind of sort of these insights like Sasha has from a municipal perspective into what you're looking for as a business to work on? I can just see you having to do a lot of talking with governments to be moving in the right direction, to understand we're looking for different business models and looking for different ways of doing things. Do you spend a lot of time explaining this, or do you sense government is already also riding the wave?
I think you see many different things across the board. Again, in a customer-centric world in which we have to solve the issues and address the needs of hundreds of millions of people, I think governments understand the issues. I think governments need to solve their own issues, whether it's from a municipal perspective, from a sort of federal perspective, from a state perspective. I think they get it when they have an issue to resolve. In terms of us as private sector, in collaboration with research institutes, in collaboration with think tanks or do tanks, or in collaboration with municipalities, it is clear that we can't wait for regulators and we can't wait for policymakers to do what they need to do. I think it's taking too long. I think they're not moving at the right speed, to be honest. but we can't move. We have to work under the existing environment. We have to work under the existing rules and regulatory frameworks. We're pushing policymakers to move in the right direction at the right speed. But again, I think Wavin is a very good example. Wavin was created as a company many, many years ago in the city of Zwolle in the Netherlands in collaboration with the municipal authorities as a pipes company. And today we're doing exactly what you are talking about. We're thinking how we can move Wavin as this company that was founded many, many years ago in Zwolle, just building pipes, to a company that is thinking about recapturing, recycling, and reusing water. Moving from being a pipes manufacturer to thinking about rainwater capture, thinking about street-side gullies that are smart, thinking about how to build new heating and cooling systems that are completely circular. I think that's a good example of the things that the private sector and businesses have to do with or without the right policy making coming from governments. We need to continue to collaborate. We need to continue to push people and organizations to move in the right directions. But again, time is up. We can't wait. We need to move the needle.
And Evelien, this notion of not being able to solve things on your own, it seems especially true for modern science as well. I mean, in science, you cannot sort of the very classic old picture of the scientist somewhere in the back of the building. That is something long gone. Yet this notion of collaborating with private entities, with citizens and government, I mean that is becoming such a big part. Do you feel like scientists are already there, moving up in this time is up sort of phase that we're describing right now? Is the speed already there?
Well, that probably depends very much on the scientist and probably also on the science. I still think you need both types of science, where perhaps someone is sitting on its own just thinking about brilliant ideas, of which, well, 9 might not be so brilliant, but the 10th might be brilliant. But you also need this type of research that brings together research from different fields, different backgrounds, and really apply them to the city. So more empirical and less empirical research, but also research that in a certain context and research that's perhaps a bit more theoretical. I think you need it all for these to find the right solutions. I also feel an urgency amongst a lot of researchers. But it depends a lot. I'm, for example, myself from Wageningen University, and that's a university that wants to improve the quality of life based on the quality of nature, basically, and that's really purpose-driven. So it's really everything that we do, and of course it still depends. It varies a bit between different researchers, but it always our research is really in favor of bringing something good to the world and adding to the solutions. And I don't think you see that in all universities. Some are really more focused on certain technical innovations or some theoretical models. So perhaps if we could use that a bit more to speed up the process as well.
Well, Kenneth, can I be so frank? Because we're now talking about this transition from a strategic perspective, but the mayor's manual is nothing without the doers. And I would like to introduce Brian Schmid. He is with us too, and he is actually working right now in making the city more sustainable by realizing water urban management solutions and especially blue-green roofs. And well, we have done some living laboratories with blue-green roofs, and we have seen that it's very beneficial for our urban task and especially for the climate adaptation task. But I want to know from Brian, how can we speed up the business and what's needed for you as you are working in the field right now? And what do you need here in the Netherlands, but also if you go abroad internationally, what you're doing in the United States? Please take us with you in the things that you're facing in everyday's life.
Yes, Sasha, thank you very much for having me and for the introduction. As you said, I work for a Metropolder company. What we focus on is building smart blue-green roofs to capture and transform rainwater for urban climate adaptation. And I think the answer to your question is twofold depending on where you look at it. So actually in 2014, I started working on green infrastructure projects with the city of New York, where they were first starting with their bioswales and green infrastructure. And, you know, they are still only now getting to a point at which green infrastructure is starting to really make an impact in what the city strategy is doing. I can commend actually the government on their Climate Mobilization Act, which they just passed last year, to now require green infrastructure on new buildings. They're still focusing on more infiltration, but the real challenge is actually to have projects that prove what is possible on large-scale infrastructure. And then if you look at it from the city of Amsterdam side, Amsterdam, or the Netherlands in general, has actually a much more of a incubator or test and see approach. And actually one of the projects we're working on is called Resilio, in which the city of Amsterdam, along with Waternet, university partners, NGOs, and ourselves, are actually testing and piloting 10,000 square meters of smart blue-green roofs, which are connected to the internet. And so we are able to monitor the data that is coming in to show the impacts, but also make real-time decisions on how to adjust our rooftops and our cities to be able to be more climate adaptive.
Okay, and what do you need to scale this up? So when you're finished with Resilio, you have done the 10,000 square meters, which is huge, especially in a small city, small metropolitan city like Amsterdam. But what do you need furthermore?
So what I think actually what we need collectively is actually a reevaluation of the resources we have inside of our city. And we need that leadership from a company to show that there is value in your rainwater in a city. And also we need the sort of support or the proof that you can value these sort of things with more than just more than just what they are coming to you as.
And I think, Sasha, you alluded to this notion of this government, in private sector, science collaboration, which we sometimes refer to as the triple helix. I mean, is that a specific sort of strategy from Amsterdam to really use that, leverage that to speed up the transitions?
Well, what you see is what you need as a city. We need this new knowledge, but because it's not enough to have a pilot project and to validate is it working. What you need to know is why is it working and how can I put this within my standardized questioning and in my for all the things that I'm going to buy in my city. So actually you're looking for somebody who can help you, like an independent third one. So you have a solution or you assume it is fiercely attractive, but you want to test this and monitor this, but you cannot do it by yourself. So actually in this triple helix, in cooperation, I can ask, well, a company help me to get my roofs more resilient or my buildings or my infrastructure more resilient. I'll give you a spot to test this, the living laboratory, and I ask the Knowledge Institute to help me to monitor it. So then I can, and I can upscale and incorporate the results within my assignment. And it's actually a moving circle. So you're not only testing, but you're looking for the new standards. In the end, we're all looking for how do we create this new normal, actually. And therefore, the cooperation in this triple helix approach is essential. And we can help each other, making actually the whole assignment larger, but also incorporating our assignment in the assignments of others and create this added value.
Daniel, you've already commented on working together with government and actually stating that governments perfectly see the needs of their citizens and feel the urgency as well. Do you work from a global perspective? Do you work with scientists at Orbia, and how does that tie into your purpose?
We do, and again, if we think about the fact that we're moved by a purpose that has to do with advancing life around the world, I think there's no scientist that would not embrace truly and keenly the concept of advancing life around the world. This transformation started 2.5 years ago. We're making a lot of progress in the startup community, doing interesting analysis on potential investments. We've already done a couple of investments. One of them has to do with artificial intelligence technologies. The other one has to do with biotech. And we're trying to solve a major challenge associated to issues that have to do with food security using biotechnology. We're working more today on the startup sort of area with sort of scientists and technologies that are doing groundbreaking research that at the end will translate into relevant business models for us and for our customers. One of the things that we really need to move more quickly as part of our transformation journey is to engage more with research institutions, with universities all across the globe. So this is homework that we're working on. We're not there yet, but it's definitely one of the key areas and the key pillars of our transformation. And we're not going to be able to solve or to help solve these global challenges if we don't have that kind of collaboration with the scientist community. But we're working on it.
Thank you. And I think you know, we've sort of well, in some sense, we've only scratched the surface in the past 30-40 minutes. But it's interesting to see how we sort of go from collaboration between within the triple helix, government, science, industry, and then dive into actual solutions, water, health, mobility, climate adaptation, obviously. But it's maybe time to move into what would be our call to action. How would we sort of take up this mayor's manual, as our podcast is titled, and see what kind of things should be in that manual from our guests. And maybe Brian, if I can bring you back on, from your perspective, you're actually out there in the field and realizing these huge numbers of square meters. What would be your advice to mayors around the world?
Well, I would give the advice to listen to the people and to what they are asking for, and to realize that sometimes what they need or sometimes what the world needs can't be given with a dollar value. And if that's nature or water or access to education or these sort of things, it needs to be something where a balance is made in order to make it fair and equitable and make it possible for companies to provide this for people and governments to provide it to people as everyone needs. And I think it's a mayor and a government's responsibility to help make a safe and clean environment possible for everyone.
Yeah. And Evelien, from your perspective, what would you put on the mayor's manual if, I was going to say if you had the opportunity, but here it is. Here's the opportunity. So,
well, I think from my perspective, what I put in there is to make sure that you understand and know the system of your city. So to have the right insights in what's going into your city in terms of products and materials, what's going out of your city, for example, if you think about circularity, have the facts about the system, so if you understand your system in terms of economic aspects, in terms of social and environmental impacts of aspects, then you also know what your interventions, where it has a certain impact. And I think as a city, you need to, I think the well-being of the people should be upfront and the quality of the system as a whole. So if you do an investment or do an intervention, not only look at, like I said earlier on, the one-dimensional, the easy indicators, but look at broader indicators. Look at the impact on the quality of life, on the environment, both now and in the long term. Because I think that's also perhaps what your companies would also like to do, but I think that's really also something that the government and that the city should do. Look at the long-term impacts on the environment, on different groups of people, high-income, low-income people, high-educated, low-educated people. And so to understand the city as a system and how different systems impact each other. And then make the right decisions, of course, which is the most difficult part, probably, but do it in a really informed way.
And Daniel, to wrap this round of advice off with you, what would be your call for action for mayors around the world?
So I'll try to be slightly provocative in terms of thinking about this mayor's manual. And I love the work that was recently done, as mentioned in my previous comments, by my dear friends at Gale Architects in Copenhagen, in a few cities in Denmark, by measuring if people were feeling happy, sad, lonely, hopeful, fearful, or bored. I think that kind of data should be very relevant in any mayor's manual. And also, I would add another to the side of the sort of emotions that should definitely drive the vision of livability, lovability, and resilience of cities. I would think about 2 or 3 metrics that have to do with circularity, and I would have those as a key dashboard in the mayor's manual. So emotions and circularity.
And that's maybe a final thing, which of course we did some research and how not to notice the mark of Orbia. And since you mentioned the metrics, maybe just as a final contribution here, can you explain how maybe the mark of Orbia maybe an example for cities around the world to sort of measure these metrics and show the progress also that you make year on year?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Kenneth, because there's a lot of thought that went behind changing our logo. We don't want to call it our logo because it's not a traditional corporate logo. It's what we call an impact mark. And it's a series of metrics that are associated to our impact in terms of profit, people, and planet, environmental, economic, and societal impact. And we want to be very transparent to our stakeholders, whether it's our employees, our customers, our suppliers, our investors, our shareholders. And every year we have a different logo based on how we're moving the needle in terms of these 6 metrics that have to do with people, planet, and profit. From a people perspective, just to give you an example, we're measuring the percentage of women in management in our company. So if we were a perfect company, our logo or our impact mark would look like 3 perfect circles. We're a company formed by individuals and by human beings. We're imperfect. We never aspire to have a perfect sort of set of circles, but we are showing our stakeholders how the impact over time would look like. So I think that kind of transparency and accountability, again, in three major areas of impact, environmental, societal, and economic, should also be something that could potentially be relevant in terms of thinking about how a majors manual could look like.
Yeah, thank you. To close off, Sasha, I think you've listened to all the advice that we need to include in our mayor's manual. I didn't hear any explicit sort of technology-driven thing out there. It was all very people-centric, listen to people, but do have these fact-based insights into your city systems. Take on a broad view of a long-term and a long-term view, and look at the livability, lovability, the resilience, and the emotions of your citizens, and obviously all the transitions and circularity, energy transition, climate adaptation we need to take into account. What is your wrap up from this conversation here?
Well, what my wrap up is that we're on a tipping point. We are going to start with this new economy, and it's actually a new adventure. And if you hear everybody over, we are in this journey together. In one way or another, we are fellowships. We have created this fellowship. And in this journey, we are hunting actually for fiercely attractive solutions. And they are not technical only, but the result of it should be that we have this livable, lovable, very human-centric city, because otherwise we cannot deal with the element that 7 billion people will live in cities, and they have to thrive, because otherwise the city will be gone. It is, in that sense, it's actually this combination of technique and people. But how are we going to bring this journey together, and how are we going to implement our hunt for the fiercely attractive solution? I think this will be the end of our journey in 2050, and it's actually what we are looking for. And now we have to speed up, of course, because it's only 30 years minus one.
Yeah, but I am the ever optimist, so thank you for your very hopeful sort of conclusion of this, and using the term tipping point in a very positive manner for this time. All that remains is to thank you for listening, for viewing. Thank you to our guests, Daniel, Brian, and Evelien. And you have listened to a special edition of the Mayor Manual podcast, the special Climate Adaptation Summit edition. And this podcast was made possible by the Netherlands Enterprise Agency and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for listening and viewing, and until next time, goodbye.